Hello, my name is Friedemann Tischmeyer, the mastering engineer of dynamic sound. This video is dedicated to the decision makers, to the A&Rs, to the product managers, to the artists who make the decision how loud the record should be. And this is a very important point, and I guess this decision is so often made on wrong beliefs. My dear colleague Earl Vickers recently made a pretty nice video of his AES speech, and it's a kind of summary of recent researches on the topic of Loudness Wars, and the conclusion of this video is that there's absolutely no evidence, absolutely no correlation between loudness and success. So the conclusion is that there's absolutely no reason to make records louder than necessary, and that you actually won't sell one record more when you do it overly loud. More the opposite is the case. So the most successful records in history were all relatively dynamic. My dear colleague Alan Parsons was so kind to allow me to take some excerpts from his wonderful tutorial video series called The Art and Science of Sound Recording. So let's listen what famous mixing engineers and producers have to say about the Loudness Wars. Here we go.
But heavy compression produces a certain type of sound, and it's become a hot debate as to whether this enhances or destroys the music on a final mix. People argue strongly for it or against it, while others argue that there's simply no reason to do it in the first place when radio is going to do it anyway. But to counter that, you have to ask yourself how important radio is as a listening medium compared to digital media such as downloads from iTunes. My record will sound as loud as the next person's, or preferably louder. Loud is good. Loud sells more records. I don't want to have the listener turn their volume up or down during the course of a song. Labels will usually apply pressure that their record will stand out in the crowd. And here's the other viewpoint. There comes a point where increased loudness becomes distortion. Light and shade is good. Constant high level is fatiguing. Our brains filter out sounds that are repetitive or monotonous, like a ticking clock or traffic noise. In other words, we respond emotionally to variation. Eventually, digital audio reaches a point where the levels just can't go any higher, and the sound goes into what is called clipping. The irony is that the CD format gave us the opportunity to record music with a much wider dynamic range than vinyl. Below -50 dB on vinyl, you're into clicks, pops, and general surface noise. On CD, the dynamic range was effectively doubled. The loudest fortissimo could be juxtaposed against the quietest whisper. Pop music has always been about energy and the power of the beat, and given the options to make a song at least seem more powerful, with an attendant effect on its popularity, it's unrealistic not to expect there to be pressure from record companies, managers, agents, distributors, and many producers to make a final mix be as commercially viable as it possibly can be. Many musicians, engineers, and producers subscribe to the opposite school of thought, not in order to reduce sales, of course, but to preserve the music. Welcome to the Loudness Wars.
When you just listen to the radio and listen to rock songs on the radio, or not even the radio, just current rock songs, there's a certain level of kind of power involved to the drums and the guitar, everything. Everything's the loudest thing in the mix, I like to say.
I hate it. Yeah, I more than hate it. I'm disgusted with it, because the guys that have pummeled music into the brains of the people that make the choices for what goes out with level have cleared away any semblance of what we fought so hard to get with digital recording. Digital recording was designed, and we refine it, and we fight for 96K, 192, to get all this stuff so that we can have unbelievable dynamics, which is what an instrument does. You know, I want what an instrument does to be in front of me. And what it does is go from really quiet to really loud. And now that we have a noise floor that's non-existent or minimal, they've lost it because they can make it loud. Just because. Because everyone's too lazy to turn it up, or you're competing against the last hit single that came out of the factory camp that punches out every single there is.
The engineers are faced with having to convince somebody that the thing's finished and as good as everybody else's record, which is volume. So they not only send a version that is peak limited and maximized to the max, that they actually print the mixes like that too, because they've mixed that way. And this is this whole thing of no one takes a chance anymore, because no one makes a decision anymore, because you know they don't have to. Shrink that never gets around it anymore. It's always in, you know, update the download or whatever. It's a terrible thing, because the poor engineer is faced with 5 or 6 different people, some of them relevant, most of them not, telling him to just raise this, just raise that, and now you've done that, just turn that up. And the only way they can do that, having given them the max, the only way they can do that is to just overdo it. Just say, sure, I've got that limiter there, our volume wins. Any contest, except audiophile, of course. Except somebody that actually cares what it sounds like.
I guess that's the way kids like it, because that's who we're making records for, basically, our kids. And I really hate it. And we are going through that process with labels. They want to, you know, when they put a mix in their stereo, if it's not as loud as the demo, they think it's a problem. And I just recently worked with an artist who went through that. She wanted her record to sound like everyone else, and we mastered it that way. And I was very honest with her. I said, you know, 10 years from now, you might regret this. And she went with my recommendation, and I love the way it sounds now. And I do make records for years to come.
If you are interested in more information about this topic, I recommend strongly to watch How Loud Should I Get? It's a video you will find on my YouTube channel called YouTube/Audio Tech Knowledge. YouTube/Audio Tech, TECH, Knowledge. I think in 10 years, when we look back, we will laugh about what we've done with music over such a long time. And I strongly encourage you to make a careful decision about the loudness you choose for the release of your record. So you're happily invited to release more dynamic music. Have fun. Goodbye.